This time we demolish all the interior of our bathroom so we can eventually live aboard Flying Coney again. And Daniel answers the important question if we paid too much money for this pile of rust that is now called Flying Coney. Hello, it's so good to see you again. I'm Barbara and together with Daniel I restore the historic sailing ship Flying Coney. Right now the most important step is to live aboard Flying Coney again. It will take at least another year until all the structural repairs of the hull are done and we can finally start building everything up again. So we decided to build an improvised, comfortable aft cabin in the meantime. But as always, before we can start to build things up, we have to tear things down. So last time we ripped apart our bathroom to find out why it's always wet in there. But as always, it took longer than expected, so we ran out of time. And that means more destruction fun for you, because there's still half of the interior in place. But before we continue to rip it out, there is another important job we have to do.
So a few weeks back, one of the water hoses here in the engine room, this one, slipped off because it only has one hose clamp. So that's the reason why you always should use two separate hose clamps to fixate a hose, like here on the black water hose. And since we do have a pressure pump, and if a hose slips off, the pressure pumps empties out whatever is in the tank. So it emptied out about 400-500 liters of water into the bilge. So yesterday we emptied out the bilge. That meant we had to bring the bilge water to the pump out station. Since we have too much draft to go with the boat to the pump out station, we needed to use the dinghy. And we took the opportunity to remove one of the last flooring panels here in the engine room, and it's quite interesting to see what's underneath it, because underneath it there is a second hydraulic tank fed by a second hydraulic pump. So it's a complete separated system from the steering system, and it's for the anchor windlass. And also, for the first time, we've seen the keel cooling pipes where they exit the hull with two very beefy valves to shut it off. So we do have a keel cooling. That means these pipes here are like a radiator. There are hoses alongside the hull and they cool the engine. So we don't have seawater in the boat. And the great thing about that is it's a very reliable system, because no seawater does mean less corrosion. The only downside of this system is there is a bit more drag outside, and also on fishing vessels you don't see them very often because nets and cables could get caught in the keel cooling, so fishermen do not like it. So this system is from when she was converted into a sailing ship. It came together with the DAF, and the outside pipes were renewed in 2018, I think. In the last video we started to rip out the interior from the bathroom because it was always wet in there and we needed to see where there was water coming in. We found that it was in this corner here because there is a concrete filled gutter and the superstructure is just placed on top of it. So over the time it rusted through, the sealant failed and water is coming in. But it's also interesting to stand here and to see all the different layers of Flying Coney's history. We do see the wooden deck that is still from her fishing days. We do see a repair that was made later with the concrete filled gutter. We do see the old bulwark, which is still in the black color. That was, I think, from her sailing ship times. And we do see the superstructure that was added in the motor sailor conversion on top of it. The reason I'm telling you all these details about the wooden deck, about the concrete filled gutter about how this superstructure here is constructed is not to tell you how horrible the condition is or how poorly it was made or something like that. I just want to show you how this boat was constructed and how it was repaired over the years. And you have to think about it. Each repair you see here, or each step here, is at least 35 years old. So it already lasted a very long time, and it's kind of expected that in some corner you will find rust, you will find rot, that not every repair was done great. But each of these improvements, repairs, call it how you will, prolonged the life of the vessel and gives us the opportunity to do a full rebuild and a full restoration on this boat. Otherwise it would have been scrapped decades ago. So this week we continue with ripping the bathroom apart, but we do want to reuse the toilet. It's a household style toilet. Behind it there is a household style wastewater lifting system which lifts the wastewater through this hose to our sea valve. So we have to move the toilet to the other side of the room. Then we can continue ripping out all this moldy and rotten plywood out and also get rid of the insulation. So that are the next steps, so let's do it. The hose from the wastewater lifting system goes all the way up to the top of the roof and then to the other side of the bathroom and then down to the sea valve. And a system like that needs to be vented, and there is a vent into a ventilation pipe from the engine room. And the problem with this great construction is that the hose here is higher up than the ventilation valve, and the ventilation pipe of the engine room is open at the bottom. So I leave it to your imagination what happens if there's some sort of back pressure in the system, and if the... well, I leave it to your imagination. Okay, next step is to flush the system with water. We've now flushed the system with fresh water several times. That makes our life way easier, because the water that's now in the pipes is less disgusting. That's a good thing. We now have to move the toilet from here to the other side of the bathroom. That's easy going. And one additional note, at the moment the water from the toilet is pumped directly overboard, which is not ideal, but we do have a wastewater wastewater pump out together with a holding tank in the engine room. We just need to reconnect it, what we will do. And on the long run we've planned to install a wastewater treatment system which makes it legal again to pump wastewater overboard, but that's for the long distant future. Why we do want to have a wastewater treatment system over a holding tank, well, it should be obvious, but you can rewatch this video here if you don't know.
Okay.
If it's mounted, good. Should be no problem.
Transferring the toilet was surprisingly easy, but I guess it's a digital task. Either it's surprisingly easy or it's really disgusting. So it's good that it was surprisingly easy. So the next step is to remove all the wall paneling here and the flooring. That needs to go because the flooring is full of dry rot, so the smell here isn't all that great. So we will remove it to have a nice temporary bathroom here, and we do try to leave as many of the tiles in place because vacuum the tiles, it's quite difficult. With the crowbar and the hammer, or as I like to call them, multi-tool part 1 and multi-tool part 2, it's a relatively fast, easy and clean way, a gentle way of removing things. What I always try is to get somewhere in between, get a starting point. If I can get in with the crowbar itself, I use the hammer to tap it in, to convince it. And after that, when I have a leverage point, I just work my way up. I try gently to move it. I try to hold it, depending on the force. Then I put my second hammer in to hold it in place. Then I try to find the next spot where I have a lever, and then gently working my way from one point to the next, getting so sometimes it's need to be brutal force, but sometimes it needs to be gentle force. And that way, if I don't cut into stuff, I have less fibers of the insulation. It's clean, easy, and easier to remove full pieces instead of hundreds of little pieces of tiles, pieces of insulation, pieces of dust, pieces of wood. So I think it's a really good way to destruct things. Another reason to use the crowbar while destructing things is that in the last years people found out that asbestos was used in a variety of different products, tile glues, flooring glues, bitumen glues, insulation, basically everywhere, and cutting asbestos is probably the worst thing you can do. This part here is from the 90s, so it's very unlikely that the insulation contains asbestos, or close to zero, also that the tile glue. But underneath the flooring tiles, if they reused an old sheet of plywood and there is some old bitumen glue underneath it, nobody knows now. And if you cut into it, it's a bad thing. And to reduce the dust level and make it less dangerous, crowbar is the way to go instead of cutting it. One question we get on a regular basis is if we do have paid too much money for the boat. And I try to answer this question. Well, buying a project boat is always difficult, and most of the time you do underestimate the money you need to spend to repair it, and you underestimate the amount of work it does take to bring a boat back to life. And I guess there is no single refit project here on YouTube where it's the other way around, where someone bought a project boat and thought, oh, it's easy, or oh, the things do cost less than expected. However, I do want to mention a few numbers to give you an idea how much things costs aboard a vessel of our size. We do have a 24-meter hull, 25-meter length overall, so that does mean we do have large and expensive equipment aboard. So here we do have our engine, the DAF 1160. It only has 5,000 running hours. They can easily reach 50,000 hours running hours, so it's not new but close to new. And the resale value of this engine is about 10,000 euros. Next to the engine we do have the twin disc gearbox, and the resale value for that one is about 15,000 euros. Buying a new one is about 40,000 euros. I do not really know how much the shaft is, but the prop is really expensive. It's about 15,000 to 25,000 euros. We also have a lightly used generator here. These things are about 3,500 to 4,000 euros. We do have an electric autopilot unit and an electric steering pump. The whole system, including the equipment on the bridge, is about 4,000 to 5,000 euros. So that puts things into perspective, and that explains why the value of a project boat this size in steel can never be zero, because the components like engine, gearbox, whatever, does cost quite a lot of money. Some of the plywood wall panels are interlocking, so we just want to remove it in the bathroom, at least for now. So I have to make a cut right at the corner. Unfortunately, that's the multi-tool. It's the only way to go, but it's really annoying and takes forever. We're now done with ripping out the interior from the bathroom, and we found no big surprises, but one small little nice detail. I was always wondering why in this room there is no heating. Throughout the ship, in every compartment, there's a radiator, and there was a central heating in the engine room to heat the whole ship. But in this room there was no radiator, so I was always wondering how did they heat it, and we found after we removed all the floor heating underneath. And I think that's really a nice detail, because it shows that someone put a lot of thought into this motor sailor conversion. It was maybe not done in the most perfect way, but they put a lot of thought into doing this aft cabin here. And I think that's a perfect point to end this video here. You may have noticed that we had a slight alteration in our plans because we are stuck in Lelystad now. That meant we couldn't do a few videos we have planned. So that means we are open to your feedback. So just tell us in the comments if you want to see something in particular, if you want to know something in particular about Flying Coney, about the project, or about what are the next steps, and so on and so on. Just let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.